So yesterday I did the Pacific Rostermania grades. Today we're going to do Americas. And Americas is absolutely popping off. So let's dive straight into it. And let's start with NRG, the world champions, who obviously some left the team. And they brought in Kiko. That's the only change that they made. And of course, when you win champs, you're not going to want to make any changes that you don't have to. But the change that they were forced into making, they arguably got the literal best player they could have done for that job. So this is a very simple one. I'm going to give them an A+. You could even call this an A++, because this might be like the legit best thing that they could have done. G2, however, is a bit more complicated. Now, again, G2, they brought in Baby Bay for Jonah P. I don't know what happened behind the scenes. I'm not rating these moves based on, money or, like what's going on, behind the scenes, all that kind of stuff. I'm just looking at the players you brought in and the players that left. Is Baby Bay a definite upgrade over Jonah P? No, right? You cannot tell me that Baby Bay is a definite upgrade. Can Baby Bay maybe help them in some areas where they were struggling before, particularly in high pressure moments in terms of keeping, the vibes good and keeping the energy up and stuff like that? Yeah, maybe. And if that's what they feel like they were struggling with and that's what cost them in those internationals, then that move does make sense. I can't really grade too much based on that. And for that reason, I think I have to give them not the best grade. I think I have to give this a C+. Because again, I'm not convinced that this is an upgrade overall for G2. That doesn't mean that G2 will be bad. G2 will still be very good. I'm very sure about that. MIBR made quite a few changes. They let go of Genom, Cortesia, and Oddzine. They are bringing in Zekken, Mazzino, and Tex. Bringing in Zekken can never be bad. That obviously has to be very good. I think keeping Verno and Aspas, considering the run that they went on in champs, obviously good. Mazzino, when he was on Lev with Aspas, probably had his best moments, and for a certain period of time, like during stage 2 of that year, looked like one of the best players in the world. So if he can get back to that level on a team with Aspas again, we're cooking here as well. And Tex was also on that Lev team that finished 3rd in champs. This has real potential. Now, I know what people are going to say. Do I think that Cortesia, would I prefer to have Cortesia than Tex? Yeah, probably. Aspas has worked with these players before. Like these players wouldn't be on the team if they didn't think they could work with Aspas. This has to be an A. Sentinels obviously brought in Cortesia and they lost Zekken. But they also brought in Caillou and Redux and let go of Zelsis and Bang. With this team now, Narrate, JunQT, Cortesia, Caillou IGLing, and Redux. What do I think about this? Well, as I just mentioned about Cortesia, I think Cortesia is just a good player, so I think that's just a good pickup in general. I think Redux fits into that as well. Caillou, there's maybe a bit more question marks over. JunQT not IGLing, there's maybe some question marks here. There's maybe also some question marks about what roles, they'll play and how that will all work out. Looking at how Sen's year ended, I think they did need some pretty significant changes. I think if they just ran it back, then that wouldn't have been great. Now, they didn't want to lose Zekken. I'd be pretty sure about that. Losing Zekken is never good. That's going to bring your grade down, because losing one of the best players in the world isn't going to be helpful for your grade. But I think that this is reasonable. I'm not super down on this Sen team. I still do think that they'll probably be pretty good. Losing one of the best players in the world, though, is going to hurt your grade, so I'm going to give Sen a B-. Well, let's move on to Cloud9, who have kept Oxy, Vic, and Zeppa. They let go of Mitch and Net and brought in Penny and Zelsis. Now let's start with Penny, actually, because I feel like Penny is perhaps the least controversial part of this all, because I think that Penny is just a good player, and when he was playing on Team Liquid as a stand-in, we were watching him, I was going, oh, this guy looks like he should be in tier 1. So I'm glad that he is, honestly. I think he deserves the opportunity, and yeah, we'll see how that goes, but I think this is a pretty good pickup. Now, there are some questions here, like, obviously they brought in Zelsis to be their IGL. Does Zelsis seem like the kind of player who could be a good IGL? Absolutely. Do I definitely know he will be? No. And will he be a better IGL than Mitch, who I think did a pretty decent job last year? Also, I don't know. I feel like Zeppa and Asuna, players who have just been on the same team for a very long time, they get overhated. They're way too overhated. I don't think keeping Zeppa is, some disaster like some people seem to think it is. The question for me with this team, again, I think that Penny is a good move. I think keeping these players is fine. The question really does come down to Zelsis and whether that will end up being a good decision. So I think I'm going to give Cloud9 just like a straight up B, but if Zelsis is a very good IGL and it does work, then this has, potential to become an A- kind of move very, very quickly. Moving on to Lev, who have kept Sato and King, which is absolutely fine. I do have one question about this, which is people, if anyone from Chile is watching this, surely Chile is not CL. Surely Chile is CH. I know Switzerland is also CH. Anyway, Sato and King, they stay around, and then we've added in Neon Blows and Spikes. We let go of Okeana's common text. Now, Lev, similar to sort of Sen here, right? Like, all of the players that they've let go have ended up on tier 1 rosters, which is normally kind of a sign, I think, of like, oh, you might have messed up there. However, there's a lot of hype around this team because of the players that they brought in. They've got a very now young, cracked roster. They brought back Onur as the head coach, who is a very strict discipline kind of, coach from what we know. I do think that this might work because the problem that you might foresee for Lev with this team is that they aren't very experienced apart from King. I think with Onur, and because he's so structured though, and you do have the experience of King being your IGL, do think it is more likely to succeed. I also do like when teams, properly represent the region that they're in Valorant to represent, right? So Lev going back to a South American team, I like that as well. Although it is Brazilian rather than LATAM. But, it's better than being North American for a South American team. So, I'm going to give this an A-. Moving on to 100 Thieves. Cryocells and Asuna sticking around. They let go of EU, Xander, and Boostio. And they bring in Vora, Timotino, and Bang. Now, let's start with the kind of easy stuff if you want to, right? Like, bringing in Bang. Bang is a good tier 1 player. Letting go of EU, though, is kind of on the opposite side of that coin, where EU is a very good tier 1 player. Letting go of a player like that, I do have, some question marks about, but I can forgive them because it's to bring in an IGL who plays the same role. So because you're bringing in that IGL, I do think that does make that somewhat justifiable. You also bring in NBS and Doombros. Again, another one here. Surely Sweden is SW, not SE. Do think that Timotino, Vora, Bang, these are all perfectly fine. I think keeping Cryo is fine. I think Asuna, again, is in that same sort of world as a Zeppa, right, where people always go, what is Asuna still doing on this team? This team's failed all these times. People describe Asuna as a wonderful teammate and all of that, and I do think when it comes to players like this that survive multiple coaching changes and everyone else is moving around but they manage to stay, well then they're probably just like a pretty good person to work with that is like pretty good at their job. And if you think about someone that you've ever worked with that is like well liked and pretty good at their job, how would you feel if they were gone all of a sudden? You'd probably be like, why the hell are we firing this guy? And it's the same in Valorant too. These two I think are going to be very, very important to how 100 Thieves do. If they hit out of the park with Vora and Timotino, then 100 Thieves are going to be probably pretty good. But if they struggle a lot, 100 Thieves, with how competitive Americas could be, actually I think could be a real struggler this year. But overall, thinking about the changes that they made here for 100 Thieves, yeah, I think it's fine. I think I'm going to give them a B. Okay, moving on to Crew. And I feel like people have been quite down on Crew. But when I was looking at this roster earlier, like, you kept Dante. Okay, don't hate that too much. You bring in Sadak. Now, here's the thing. Sadak and Les we can bring into this discussion. Both Sadak and Les, their times in EMEA didn't go so great. Do you doubt Les as a player? Really? And Sadak, before his time on Karmi Core, was seen as one of the GOAT IGLs. So would I be shocked if Sadak came back to Americas and it started working again on a South America team? Absolutely not. I think Silence and MW as well. MW is a player who has had talent, was always seen as a very talented player, but was on a lot of dysfunctional rosters. And I do think that this team actually could kind of cook. Now, there is question marks with this team. There are quite a few question marks, right? Like, is Sadak washed? Can Les, become the loud Les? Who is MW in 2026, right? Can Dante perform at a tier 1 level? Who the hell is playing Smokes? I don't know, because when you look at like all of these players, there isn't many Smokes games between them. If I had to guess, I think it will be Sadak, but I'm not 100% on that. There is definitely still some question marks here, but I kind of want to give them a good grade. I kind of want to believe. I want to believe in this roster. I want to believe in the Sadak IGL. So I'm going to give them a B+. That maybe is too high because it might all fall apart. It's a risk from Crew. Like, if you get a fragging MW, if you get Dante playing at like a really high level, Sadak back to IGL, Les becoming like potentially one of the best players in the world. Because that's the thing. With Les, you have to remember, like, if Les is peak Les, a lot of those questions just disappear because all of a sudden you've added one of the best players in the world to your team. I have some hope for them, but they could be bad, they could be very good. Anyway, moving on to EG. who let go of Derek, Ye, Nature, and Icy and brought in Com, Okeanos, Bao, and DG Sin. Now, similar to Crew, when I look at this EG team, like just straight up, would I say, is this EG team better than the old one? I would say yes. There is still some question marks here, right? We've got question marks. Com has never IGL'd before. Similar to Celsius though, does he seem like the kind of player who would be a good IGL? Yes. Obviously he's worked with Potter before, so that should help as well. The other question really for me is DG Zin, right? The rest of the roster, I'm kind of like, yeah, I can see this working. The other question is DG Zin, because apparently his English, you know, isn't necessarily the best. But I do think when I look at this roster, if this wasn't DG Zin and was someone else, I would think, maybe we could use with a bit more firepower here, right? So adding in someone like DG Zin, who's kind of like just pure firepower, I think actually could kind of cook, right? And that's not to say that, you know, Okeanos and Bao, I think, will add a decent amount of fragging to this team. Maybe the language stuff will be a problem. We shall see. So overall for EG, there is still some question marks here, but I do think it's an upgrade. So again, I'm going to give them a B+ as well. Moving on to Loud. They have kept 4 of their team. They only let go of Robbie BK, and they're bringing in Dark. And now they might also be bringing in Erde. As you see here, it says it's kind of rumored. Now the rumors are that if Erde does come in, then maybe Kawanseen will drop out, or, you know, we'll see. We're not really 100% sure. The problem with Loud is that they didn't do very well last year. But like on an individual level, you look at these names and it's like, well, look, show you can't really drop. 30, I think, showed enough to at least get another try as well. Kawanseen historically has been good enough to, you know, warrant another go. Pancada too, but now he's IGLing. Despite the fact that they were like really quite bad, like I can understand why they have done this. But there are, you know, like the thing is they were quite bad last year, and also then, you know, we got Pancada IGLing, and I'm not sure how that will go. Because I can understand it somewhat, I'm gonna give them a B-. I'm not too optimistic about Loud's chances, even though, like, on paper, like, it could actually be all right. So let's move on. Let's move on to Furia. And, hey, here's the great thing for Furia, right? Like, it can't get any worse. So the changes that they've made, like, this team is better than their old team. So that's going in their favor here, right? Have you upgraded your roster? Yes. They are going in the right direction, but their starting, you know, the starting point for them versus everyone else was just so low that even if they're going in the right direction, everyone else, you know, just started from a much higher point. So this roster, I don't think will be a doormat like they were last year. This roster will be competitive. So I'm going to give this a B, right? Because it is an upgrade. Finally, we got Envy. Obviously, they had the 2 players who couldn't play due to age. So, you know, there's not much you can do about that. We don't know who their 5th is. To me, grading Envy is probably the hardest of the lot, because depending on who that 5th is, you know, that's going to drastically change probably how I feel about this roster. So they don't have a smokes player. But a part of me does think could Inspire, mainly playing Cypher a ton, but now Cypher is quite a bit worse, that they probably don't want to do that. Could Inspire play smokes? If I was the coach of Envy, I also might be like testing out extra and being like, can you just like practice some smokes for us this offseason? Because here's the thing, a Yoru nerf is coming. And so at that point, like if Yoru ever becomes like, oh, you really can't get away with playing this agent on every map now, like could we maybe start to teach Exeter some more roles, right? Where you can't just play perma Yoru. Let's say Envy brought in like Jonah P. Right, if this was Jonah P and you're saying like Inspire is going to be your main smokes player, Jonah can play some Senti, you can move Kesnet to Chamber if you need to, potentially as well on some maps. Like if that was like what you wanted to go for, there's a vision here. There's a vision here that I think can work for this team. But it really does depend on who that 5th is and how the roles are going to be sorted out throughout this year. Bringing in Kesnet, I think, is just good. Yeah, I think what they've done so far probably deserves a B+ for what they've done, but there's so many questions that I have for this team and like the direction that they're gonna go in. This video was pretty positive about Americas, but that's how I feel, and that's why I feel like Americas is gonna be such a fun region to watch, because there's so many teams that I could be like, oh yeah, I can believe in this roster, and so I'm looking forward to Americas.